All right, welcome to the Consistently Performance podcast. I'm Dr. Cassidy Preston, and we're here focused on helping people improve their performance and their well-being. Today, we got a great special guest with Connor Crisp. Tells us a great story of all these ups and downs throughout his career. Definitely injuries, some successful years, and the tough years, and how he dealt with those emotions. So there's a lot in there on the emotional roller coaster, as well as the law of attraction we even get into. So lots of great takeaways. Encourage you to listen to the whole thing. And as always, we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Campoli trying to clear it. Burrow shoots, scores!
All right. Well, thanks for joining, Connor. We'll dive right into it. Want to just give us a quick overview of your career, and then we'll dive into some specific areas within that.
Yeah, so grew up playing AAA with York Simcoe, Newmarket area. I played there major peewee to minor midget. Was drafted to Erie. I played a few years in Erie. Was drafted to Montreal. Finished my OHL in Sudbury, and then I played my first year pros in Hamilton. And we got moved to Newfoundland, the American League. I played 2 seasons there, and then I played a year in Toledo, Ohio, for the Walleye. So it was a good career, a lot of fun, a lot of good, cool experiences.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you, and were you drafted by? You were drafted by the Canadians in the 3rd round.
Yep.
Right. So yeah. And what was that experience like? Obviously, that would probably be one definitely a nice highlight in the career.
Yeah, man, it was pretty special. It was so up in the air. You're gonna get drafted. You're not gonna get drafted. It was like pretty unknown. I tried to stay pretty low key and keep it off mine, but it was, it's always in the back of your head.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a special day for me, but to spend it with my family, the people who've been there since day one, and at this age now, and back then too, but more so now, I realize how much they contributed. And I always say to guys, it's just as much your career as it is your family, right? Like my sister traveling to tournaments and away games and all the driving and hotel rooms, and they gave up a lot for me. So that day was pretty special for all of us.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And let's dive back for the beginning, and we can kind of touch on some different points. But obviously, being in Newmarket, which is where I'm living right now, right? And you did pretty well in your minor midget year. You went in the 2nd round to in the OHL draft. And so what was that experience like? And then you went straight from there to the OHL, right? Which is always a big jump. And what do you want to maybe just talk about that transition from minor hockey to junior hockey, which is a big one a lot of players sometimes struggle with, and it's not an easy jump, right? So
yeah, I mean, it was tough for more than one reason, right? Like leaving home for the first time, being away from your family, you jump out of your comfort zone pretty quick. So the aspect outside of hockey was pretty emotional for me, leaving home, kind of being homesick, not used to it, and then even the hockey part too, right? Going from being one of the top players on your team to a 4th line guy and having to take a different role. Like now you're not scoring 50 goals a year, and you're not on every power play, penalty kill. You're not playing 30 minutes a night. Now you're toned back. You're battling for ice time and positions, and it's a lot different than minor hockey, right? You really, I mean, you dive right into it, right? You don't really have that like ease period where you can kind of figure things out. It's figure it out fast, or somebody's going to be there to take your spot. So it was emotional on and off the ice, but it was, I had a really good team my first year, a lot of good older guys, leaders that, helped the process a lot.
Yeah.
So they made it easy. I had a really good billet. My family came down a lot, but the transition from minor hockey to OHL is probably the biggest change I've ever had.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not an easy one, but it sounds like you had the good support system, and that definitely helps. And what happened in your 2nd year? Did you have major injury in your 2nd year?
Yeah, I had shoulder surgery. So I had a fight in exhibition, dislocated my shoulder, and then I got the tough news that it was like a 6-month recovery after shoulder surgery that needed to be done. So it was, again, the emotional roller coaster of like playing pro sports, and it was tough.
Yeah, there's a lot of unpredictable stuff, and being able to deal with that. But obviously then the year after, things started to kind of get rolling, and then getting to play pro hockey. I always like to touch on that. So that's another big jump, right? So obviously, had some good success, got the NHL draft that you mentioned, but what was that like jumping from the OHL to the AHL? Like that's a big jump. And what was that like?
You know what? You think it's a big jump when you go from playing as a 16-year-old playing against 20-year-olds, but when you go into the league as an 18-year-old playing against men who are 35 and have families, and they've had 15 years more experience than you, that's a big jump. Everything, man, like from what the locker room's like, to the intensity. You think that you focus a lot in junior, but when it
Yeah.
comes to pro hockey, it's no messing around. It's all business. And
Yeah.
there's always somebody creeping up behind you. Every year there's a new draft. Every year there's a
Yeah.
new guy coming in to take your spot. But yeah, it's enjoyable because you're a pro athlete, you're competitive, right? So
Yeah.
that going to pro just ramps up that competitiveness to another level that you didn't think existed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember my first year was tough again, battling in and out of the lineup, healthy scratches, kind of my first experience having healthy scratches at that level. And,
Yeah.
the disappointment of having family come into a game and you're not in the lineup and there's
Oh,
just
yeah.
no, no give, right? Like
Yeah.
the coaches do what they want and
Yeah.
it is what it is. But, again, I had a lot of great leaders on that team. We had an older team, and that first year, whether it's OHL or pro, is just a learning curve more than anything, right? You kind of get into the vibe and see how things run, and then come Christmas, All-Star break, you're into a groove and you have a pretty good feel for things.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And yeah.
it's a long transition. It's not very quick. So
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of adversity in there, and how one of the like a common concept we talk a lot about is confidence, obviously. So, obviously, from minor midget to a high draft pick to kind of some adversity in your OHL career, then some success, and then NHL draft pick, and then being in pro hockey and more adversity. So a lot of like different successes and adversities in there. What would you say the roller coaster and how that affected your self image and how your confidence level, and obviously as an offensive forward, you want to be able to play with confidence and produce. What's your perspective on your struggles and successes with confidence?
just like this, man, all the time, every day. Like I look at the long of my career
Yeah,
and I say, year by year it's like
yeah,
this, but you
yeah,
go hour by hour.
yeah,
Like when you're playing, it's nonstop. You feel really good. One day, I wake up, I played a good game on a Saturday, I go in
yeah,
for Sunday and I'm
yeah,
not in the lineup. So you go from being up here
yeah,
to down here like that,
yeah,
so it's a lot of stress and a lot of worry that at the end of the day is out of your control, right?
yeah,
Why bother worrying about something that you can only control on the ice? And if you work as hard as you can and you put forth a good effort every time you're on the ice, and you should be rewarded. And it's
mm-hmm.
just sometimes you think you might deserve a little more than you get.
Yeah,
So it's you can't have that aura around you that I feel bad for myself, because nobody cares,
yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
you walk into the rink and guys feel the same way,
Yeah,
right? Just the little things of hockey, like waiting for the coach to come in to post a lineup on the wall to say, like, where am I? What line am I on? Am I on the power
yeah,
play? Am I in the lineup? And it's,
yeah.
yeah, like, it's, like I said, it's just an emotional roller coaster from day one, the moment you walk into the room.
Yeah, no, and I think that you hit a lot of really good points there. And one of the things that maybe I ask you to dig a little deeper in is just like when we tie our self image to getting out of the lineup, getting the points, and it's just like it goes up and down. And so obviously you probably both experienced that, like you kind of alluded to,
Yeah.
but also being able to deal with that and not let that shake you too much. And you still got to be able to get back out because you will be back in the lineup, or when you do get your next shift, and you got to go out and play with confidence and can't be overly doubting yourself. So and we talk a lot about having an accurate self-image. That's, how you see yourself and not tying it to all these external things that can
Yeah.
definitely weigh on you. And we all struggle with it at times. I definitely struggle with it. Like, I don't know, you might not know, but my first year in the OHL, like I had no points as a forward. So I didn't get up an assist. So
Right.
it was like, that
Like,
really
give me a
stunk.
bounce somewhere,
Give me a
right?
bounce somewhere. Right. And it was like, I remember like 15 games in the season, it was just like, you're not going to play anymore. So it was like
Yeah.
because I just had no points, and it was just like, oh, great. So when I did dress, I get like 3 shifts, or then
Right.
I was just a healthy scratch. I got a healthy scratch for like 34 games. So like confidence was hard to
Big time.
maintain, and I was able to overcome it. But like, that's my unique story. But I love to get other players and players that play at that high level, their perspective on both, the struggles and the hard part, but also how overcoming it and embracing it and not letting it shake them. So,
Right.
yeah, I want to maybe just
Well,
dive
kind
a
of,
bit
yeah,
into
like
that.
what you said, about getting, and I was in that same situation where you go up
Yeah.
to a game and you get revved up, have a good warm up, that whole day process from like morning skate to, the afternoon meal, the pregame nap, and you get to the game and you play 3 shifts. And like, how am I supposed to produce
Mm-hmm.
being on the ice for 3 minutes tonight? You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And it gets to your head. All of a sudden, the end of the first period, you haven't had a shift, you're cold on the bench, and the coach throws you out for a charity shift. And you're like,
Yeah.
I'm just getting pucks in, getting pucks out. I can't get scored on. I'm not contributing.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But
Yeah.
again, you just can't feel sorry for yourself, because that time comes when all of a sudden you get on for that one shift, that 45 seconds, and a puck hits you and goes in, you got a goal, and you're like, I only needed one shift,
Yeah.
right? Like that's all it
Exactly.
really takes. And I got big into like the law of attraction and like the way the world works and stuff like that. And it really helped me out a lot because the first few years of my career, I'd get pretty down, right? Like I get healthy scratch, a few shifts, and I call my parents. I'd be like, this just sucks. I'm like doing everything I can. I'm off the ice last. I'm on the ice first. I'm in the gym. I'm doing everything, and I just feel like I'm not getting noticed.
Yeah.
And I just, having that little pity party for yourself. Like I said earlier, nobody cares because everybody's there for their own career at the end of the day. But yeah, finding the positives, right? You get on the ice, you make a couple good hits, you get that tap on the back from the coach. And I wish all coaches knew how far that went. I see it sometimes in the NHL where a guy will get a tap on the back, and I notice little things like that because that's all it is. That little tap is like a confidence booster. The captain of the team coming up from you and giving you a tap on the pads. It's the little things that really matter, that really help boost that confidence, so that when you get on for that next shift, you're not sluggish. I've been sitting on the bench for 20 minutes. You're ramped up. You get your name called. It's like, okay, here we go. Here's my opportunity. Let's make the most of it.
Yeah.
But, for a lot of guys, it's tough to kind of have that mentality because it is tough, man. It's like it's an endless struggle when you're not scoring 30 goals a year and you're not a veteran who's played 5 years in the league. You've got to earn your stripes, and it's not always smooth sailing.
No, I love that answer. And you brought up the law of attraction. I want to dive into it a bit more because, obviously it's a big part, and, you need, focus on what you want, but you also have to put in the effort. Obviously there's two sides to it. And sometimes people think it's just be positive all the time. It's not exactly that simple, but it is important to like what you focus on, what you put your energy towards. And one of the ways, my favorite way, and we've been explaining a lot lately, like you can spend your time and energy believing and doing and focusing on what you can control, or worrying and doubting, and we could throw in blaming and whining and complaining in there too. And the more you're doing those things, it's actually hurting you and throwing you off, right? And I remember I did a ton as a player. I'd be like, oh, it's this guy, the ref, the coach, my teammate, and I'm focusing on all these things or doubting myself. And the more you go down that rabbit hole, you're actually making it worse for yourself. Yeah. And so, a quick way we've talked about a lot recently, is going to be good to get your feedback on it, is like, literally break it down. How much time and energy today on the ice today or on the ice yesterday were you worrying and doubting, or blaming and complaining versus believing and doing? And because even if you worry, we're human, we're going to worry. How much time and energy do we go down the rabbit hole, or we go, okay, I don't have to keep worrying. That's out of my control. I can understand it, accept it, and focus on, hey, when I do get my next shift, when things do turn around or I get an opportunity, I believe I can do it. Right. All you need is one shift to get a point, to get on the scoreboard. Doesn't mean you will, but like you got to believe that you can and focus on what you can control. So you brought it up. I want to, let you kind of maybe dive a little deeper into it, because I think that's a big one. A lot of players definitely struggle with. It's not a habit we generally learn and develop.
Sure.
So
it's just it just comes down to like little things, right? Like you fall into this rabbit hole of like negative thinking, and it's tough to get out. And I tried to teach myself, as soon as a negative thought came in my head, it's like, hey, flip it around, positivity, little words. Don't say can't or won't, or, switch it around to I can do this. I just need to work on this, or I need to do this. And you know what I mean? There's positive ways to kind of spin it.
Yeah.
Like you said, that you go on the ice and all of a sudden you think, your line mates are kind of causing you ice time. Well, what are you thinking about that for? Why don't you support your line mates, right? And make their job easier, which makes you look good, and then you contribute to the team. Yeah. So like you said, how much are you worrying about stuff that's out of your control? A lot of it at the end of the day is in your control, right? If you want to play a lot of minutes and you want to have a good career, you got to put in the effort. You got to be in the gym. You got to go to, you got to put in the little things that a lot of guys aren't doing. Yeah. So that is in your control. But whether you're in the lineup one night or, whether you're going to score a goal that night, you can't control that. You see goals in the NHL where it's hitting a guy's butt or hitting his back. You don't know how it's going in, but you could be that guy. Yeah. Right. So I remember my pre-games sitting in the room, listening to music and stuff. It was always positive thoughts, trying to feel and manifest like a positive game, or, you had a goal earlier in the year and the crowd went nuts and you're at home. Try to remember what that felt like, and just, give yourself these goosebumps where you're like, man, that felt good. I'd love to feel that again tonight. I know I can, there's no reason I can't, right? Yeah. The opportunity's there. It's been given to me. I've been put in the lineup tonight. Yeah. When I'm on the ice, I'll make the most of it.
Yeah. No, I love that.
It's easy to say, right? Like it's easy to say, be positive, be positive, be positive. And it's not easy, because I still, to this day, I worry and I stress, and I'm human, right? People do that.
Yeah.
but to the best of your ability to be able to like flip that around to positivity and just be
Yeah.
thankful that you're given the opportunity at that night or just in normal life any day, right? Like you
Yeah.
wake up this morning or tomorrow morning and just be
Yeah.
happy it's going to be 30 degrees in September.
Yeah.
Like find positivity in the day
Oh
to
yeah.
start it off right.
Great weather today. So
Unbelievable.
yeah.
I'll take it every day.
Yeah.
I told my fiance, I said, I feel guilty not golfing today. It's a
Yeah.
short season. I got
I
to take
know.
advantage of this.
Yeah. I'm going out tomorrow actually. So
Perfect. As you
first I've been
should.
out in a while.
Nice.
So and one thing I always love to help, clarify and drill home too is like, it's like having a positive mindset and outlook is like kind of the outcome. And what
Yeah.
we're really doing is a growth mindset and focus on like, I can. Not like, it's not like, sometimes you're in a tough situation and it's like, you're not getting ice time. So it's not like, oh, I like not getting ice time. That's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
what being positive is. It's
Yeah.
more about like, hey, how can I embrace that and learn from this and focus on what I can do, right? It's like you said,
Right.
it's those minor details in the wording and perspective that, we would now often call a positive mindset that versus like being negative, bad attitude concept.
Yeah.
And, I always like to clarify, like, the research and what it really, says on this is growth mindset, learning and
Yeah.
growing, focusing on what you can control, making the most out of situations, which you use that wording, I think is so powerful. And the more people can get clear and understand that and those little nuances, the more they then can develop those habits around it. And it,
Right.
it helps them deal with the stress. Cause like you said, stress is unavoidable. Worry is
Yeah.
unavoidable. We're human in a way. But it's learning to understand what it means and what it's about and how you can use that and let it go and use it and channel it to what you do want to do and what you want to create. Right. And
Yeah. Just like,
that's,
you can turn it into so many things like
yeah,
motivation. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
motivate yourself
yeah,
to improve on something that you're worrying about.
yeah,
Like you have a big job interview coming up. Just be
yeah,
excited that you've been given an opportunity to be
yeah,
there and make the most of it. You get the
yeah,
job, awesome. If you don't, there's thousands of other jobs out there.
yeah,
It's out of your control. You did the best you could in that interview. What are you going to stress about it for?
yeah. No, that's awesome. I love that point. There's another big area I want to dive into, which we've been kind of touching on, which is just like, a lot of us have this fantasy and go into a season with a fantasy where it's like, it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Like everything's just going to be good. And there's going to be no pain or challenges or
Yeah.
stresses. And usually every time somebody does that, it doesn't go well and they get overly stressed. And that's like, we have this fantasy of it's going to go this way. And then as soon as it doesn't, we get deflated. And that's that
Yeah.
emotional roller coaster. And so, we've touched on a few times where it's like, challenges and pain are unavoidable. And so when we can have perspective of that and embrace it, it really helps us to like navigate through the ups and the downs. And so I like, and we'll talk about, your concussions and things at times, but, just in general, just those ups and downs and the joy and the pain of being a professional hockey player, of the journey of your hockey career and going through junior. And I think that's always good because there's a lot of obviously younger players and junior players that listen and watch these. And the concept is like, you're not just going to be smooth sailing and
Right.
and so it's
Yeah.
good to get, guys' stories and perspective on those ups and those downs. So a little long-winded question, but I think it's an important area to jump on.
Yeah. I mean, it's just never ending, right? Like,
Yeah.
we touched on my second year in the OHL and I missed the whole season. So that was
Yeah.
my draft year. All summer, I worked my butt off. I put in the
Yeah.
time. I spent the money. I did what I could. And then my
Yeah.
first game, not even regular season, I'm out for the year.
Yeah.
Right. So like my mindset went from being way up here, like this is my draft year. I'm going high. I'm going to do what I
Yeah.
can. I'm going to play hard. I'm going to get a good opportunity
Yeah.
to I missed my draft year. I'm not getting drafted. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? All
Yeah.
these things start running through your mind. And it's kind of like, how am I going to rebound? So, you know, honestly, myself, I went through a time where I was, it was a dark time. I was back home. I was uncomfortable even going back to my school, my hometown, right? Because for me, it was kind of like embarrassing. Well, why aren't you playing hockey? What happened?
Yeah.
It takes a hit to your ego, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And it's tough to swallow that. But then, once I got the opportunity to get back in the lineup, I played 5 games that year and they were good. It was just nice to get on the ice. But that summer was like hit the reset button. That same mentality you had the year before, have it again. You're getting the same opportunity come September. You can't prevent injuries. Like you said, there's no fantasy hockey land. You play 3-3s in, less than 2 days, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. You're going to be tired. You're going to be banged up. That's just, pro athletes enjoy that. You know, you enjoy the fatigue and the feeling of like working as hard as you can. It's very gratifying. And then you got the whole week to recover, and then you just do it again.
Yeah.
Right. So you put your body through the ringer. So you have to expect it. But again, it's how you respond to those little injuries. How dedicated are you at, you know, sticking to your protocol, listening to your physio, listening to the doctors, how bad do you want to get back in the lineup? And, you know, I was bad for it too after shoulder surgeries. Those first 2 months are tough to get up for. I'm not going to play for 6 months. What do I have to do these exercises for? They're not going to get me anywhere.
Yeah.
And then you realize, well, if I started those when I should have, maybe I'd be a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all where your mental state's at. And I've experienced both, where I've been through like a tough time and a bad injury and I didn't respond well, to having another shoulder surgery in the summertime and being like, hey, listen, I'm going to work hard so that I can get a couple months of training in and be ready for training camp and, you know, bring the heat, do what I can do once I get there.
Yeah. No, I love that. And one of the concepts that often helps, and maybe can speak to it, is like just the silver lining kind of idea of like, you know, when there's a thing that we think's all bad, like an injury, well, there's often some silver linings in there. And so I don't know if you maybe want to speak to that. You know, I think that's a great example. It's pretty rare. I've had a few other guys, and, you know, it does happen obviously where there's that big of an injury, but it's not that common. Right. Yeah. And so, you know, maybe some of the silver linings of some of the adversities you faced, and like, you know, the learning opportunities that you got out of that. Like what, do you maybe want to speak to any of that?
It's with any injury, there's a time where you feel like you've kind of plateaued, where you're like, I've been doing my rehab for 2 months. I feel the same, you know, I still have pain. I can't sleep. And you just got to like break that curve, you know, like you hit a point where you're like, I've done everything I've been told to do, and I'm still not back in the lineup. I'm still not playing. How long is this going to take? You know, so for like the learning curve, I've had 3 shoulder surgeries. So I've been through it. I know what to expect. So I've kind of like lived and learned along the way where, you know, when you hit that plateau, you got to bust through, right? You just got to like stick to it and listen to the guys. And, you know, doctors are doctors for a reason, right? Like they've been there, and these surgeons know what they're doing. They know these timelines because they're accurate. But yeah, just again, back to like finding positivity in like the smallest of situations, right? Like that year, I kind of, after the first couple months, I got over the self. I was done feeling sorry for myself, and I was just happy to be home, right? Like, when am I ever going to be able to spend a Christmas at home with my family and see my friends in high school and spend this time with people that I've grown up with? Never again, right? Because at that time, my thought process was, well, I'm going to get drafted to the NHL. I'm going to play 15 years pro hockey. I'm going to make money. I'm going to have a great time, but I'm going to be away from these people. You know, I'm going to lose touch with them. So again, just like being grateful for the fact that you have that chance to be at home and spending time with, you know, friends and family, that you may never get that like quality time again.
Yeah. And that perspective is priceless, right? Like that's
for sure.
Like, and then when you come back, that might have helped you play better that next year, which led to your draft and those kind of things. So, you know, there's never no what if. We can play the what if game all day, but there's definitely silver linings there with gratitude, perspective, and things that you might not have got. So no, I definitely appreciate you diving into that. What about anything else, you know, on terms of the mental game? We definitely will touch on the injury side, the concussion side, and you know, the ending of your career, and then we'll, you know, talk about the good work you're doing now, coaching. But what about anything else in terms of like managing emotions and the, you know, frustrations and getting angry at you know, different things, or as well as just like, you know, learning to like not get too tied up with points, because like you talked about getting high and low. Those are 2 other big ones. I'm not sure if you want to dive into either of those, but I know especially as forwards, they get caught up in points a lot. And, you know, people getting angry and frustrated in situations and be able to channel those emotions is all obviously important too.
Yeah.
I'll give you a choice.
It's the points thing. You know what I mean? For me, when I was playing in pro, even like junior too, the fighting was a big part of it, right? Like stressing about, you know, knowing that I'm going to have to fight a guy the next night and not taking it well, not sleeping, not having an appetite, going to the game and just being nervous, thinking about it. And the point thing too, like I remember I went in the OHL, when I was playing for Sudbury, 16 games without a point. And I was just, all I was doing was thinking, like, oh my God, I was doing so well. How am I, you know what I mean? You can't catch a break. I think it's important for guys to kind of have somebody to fall back to, like somebody to talk to openly, who's going to be honest with you and, you know, be hard on you. You know what I mean? In the sense that they're just going to speak the truth. Right. And I had that. And, you know, my old trainer, Aaron Downey, he was a guy that I could always call up and say like, Downs, listen, I can't score. I don't know what's going on. I'm not playing well. I'm not getting the opportunities I think I deserve. And he just shoot it to you straight. Right. And there's a big difference from talking to, your girlfriend or your mom or your dad, or your buddy from back home, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. Right.
Yeah.
You're going to say, I'm not playing. This is BS. And you're going to be like, yeah, this is BS. They're there to make you feel good. Right.
Yeah.
But there's somebody who's there who's,
helping.
Yeah, exactly. And Downs had been through the NHL. He played 15 years. He's been in the minors. He's been up and down. And he was just a guy that said, listen, this is how it works.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's not all going to be glorious. It's not going to be smooth sailing every day you walk into the rink. But when you break through that, like I said, that plateau of me not scoring in 16 games, when you break through, when it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
Right. All of a sudden, this like emotion comes to you, and it's just like, what a feeling. Monkey. You see guys scoring goals in the NHL, taking the monkey off their back, but it's honestly how it feels.
Yeah.
It's like a weight lifted off your shoulder. Now all of a sudden you're playing free. Right.
Yeah.
Like, you ask a lot of guys, and I've had this conversation with guys before, and we joke about it still, but you ask a guy who gets a lot of points in pro hockey, and you get a point in the first minute or the first 5 minutes of a game, you're laughing.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're like, I've done my job. I've got a goal. Now everything I get from here is cake.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just, you play free. And that's when you see a guy get a point in the first minute, he finishes with 4, because now he's being creative and he's going outside the box and he's doing different things instead of gripping his stick and, feeling like I can't get scored on, little things like that. If you can bring that mentality to the first shift of every game, you're going to have success no matter what.
Yeah, I love that. And that's such a big thing. And that's crazy because you put up, I was looking earlier, like it's like what, 55 points in 67 games that year. So like you were close to a point a game in 16 game streak, 16 game streak of no points in a row. Yeah. So that's a cold spell. Like,
I know. Do you think you're like, can't I just get a second assist? You know what I mean? Just dump it in. Somebody, two, I don't care who touches it. Just get it in the net, put my face on the sheet.
Yeah. So, and you bring up such a good point where it's like, when you're not getting it, then you just get tense. And then when you do get it, then you relax and you play more free. So, and that mindset is, it's not easy to create, but it is very doable. I'll share my quick story. Some people might know it already, but for your perspective, my last year of just junior hockey, like junior A back, was at OA playing tier 2. And I put up like 74 points in 50 games. But like out of the 50 games, 20 of them, not in a row, but 20 of them, I had no points.
Yeah.
So like, which is like, that means I like lit it up 30 games to 20. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
And when I look back, and you could go back and look at each game, I was like, I'm just going to go look at the games and what happened in those games. And almost every game got a point in the first period.
Yeah.
Almost every game I got a point, I got points in the first period.
It's amazing.
If I didn't get a point in the first period, I'm like, what's wrong with me? What's going on? Well, it's not my day. Like, I'm like mailing it in. There's still 2 more periods. Like, I'm pretty much just throwing myself 40 minutes left. There's still twice as much hockey left. And I'm like, not giving up, but like, in my head, getting thrown off and not keeping a healthy perspective and being, like you said, play free. And, one of my favorite lines, especially for scoring or any kind of outcomes, you often get it when you least expect it. Once you're not focusing on it, like we want to let go of that, focus on what we want to do and who we want to be, and just be in the moment. And being able to clear our mind becomes so important to prevent those slumps and prevent from the derailment. So I'm glad you brought that up. And so it's, kind of learning lessons along the way there. And, I had a good example of a player this past year who's playing junior, and he was like a point a game. And he literally doubled by the end of the year because he stopped checking the stat sheet. Right? Like, I don't know about you, but like I would just stack. Like, what? Right after I get a point, like, what am I at?
They give me that apple.
They give me that apple, like, right? Like you're just constantly checking, and it's like, so then you're thinking about it, like, but it's not actually beneficial for your mindset. And then, because then especially when you don't get them, now you're really going to think about it, and it's problematic. So this guy went from like a point a game, he's like 20th, to like 2 points a game, and finished 5th in the league by just that. There's a couple other things he did too, but one of the basic principles is like, we got to let go of the outcomes. Like, obviously you want it, but you don't need to get it. Let's focus on something more important to focus on, and get connected with that. So no, I loved how you brought all that up. Let's do the other big one that you said. So the nerves of fighting. So which ties in also the fear of injury, but definitely, fighting's, not as big of a part of the game anymore, but there's always, like, I was talking to a player the other day, like, worried about hitting. I was like, you don't want to get hit, don't play hockey. I was like,
for sure.
And but that's not quite the same for hitting. But I don't know if you want to just talk about being able to deal with that, because that definitely can take a toll when you're worried. Like I never fought a lot. I fought a little bit. I was a gritty player just and but like, I just, for whatever reason, I was like, nah, I'm not gonna like, I wasn't that
and
tough.
it's
Let's
not
put
for
it
everybody.
that way.
Yeah. It's
So
tough, man. Like
yeah,
it's you have to, like, like bringing it back to minor hockey and being
yeah,
like a 50 goal guy and a top player to my
yeah,
first year in the OHL and
yeah,
trying to find a way to stand out, right? When you
yeah,
get to a certain level, everybody can skate, everyone can
yeah,
shoot, everyone can pass,
yeah,
everybody's a good hockey player, but
yeah,
what separates you from the pack,
yeah,
right? If you can get 20 goals and 20 assists, so can 5 other guys on your team,
yeah,
right? So when you're looking at an NHL draft, which guy is going to be picked? Well, it's the guy who can bring a little bit more. It's the guy who finishes his hits. It's the guy
yeah,
who drops the glove, sticks up
yeah,
for his teammates.
yeah,
And that's kind of like what I adapted, right? I try to contribute on a score sheet, but at the same time, getting into fighting my first year. I remember I think I had 5 fights my first year in the OHL, and I had my
yeah,
exit meeting with the coach. And I was never in my career told to fight. And I
yeah,
always told myself if somebody told me to fight, that, I'd
yeah,
turn around and say,
yeah,
you can shove it, right?
yeah,
There's a time and a
yeah,
place, and
yeah,
I'm putting my body on the line. And my coach
yeah,
had said, if you want to make it somewhere, you're going to have to fight. And at
yeah,
that time, I said, yeah, I know I will, because I seen the
yeah,
outcome and I seen
yeah,
what it brought to my game.
yeah,
But saying that, it's hard not to. My first few years of stage fighting was very much a part of the game.
yeah,
It was very much like, this guy's got X amount of fights, I have X amount of fights.
yeah,
People are going to expect us to fight. We're going
yeah,
to fight,
yeah,
right? Later in my career, it was more so just the pure emotion of hockey. There's a big
yeah,
hit.
yeah,
Without thinking, I'm going to go after that guy, or I'm going to jump on, stick up for my teammate. And you get respect from guys not only on your team but the opposite team too,
yeah,
right? You kind of mediate the situation. You're kind of there to, like, listen, if you guys want to mess around, then myself and my bash brother on the bench will control what's going on the ice, right? But
yeah,
it was tough, man. Like I said, you lose sleep, you think about it. There's the potential for some serious injuries, which I did suffer in fights with shoulders and concussions, and
yeah,
um, you just can't think about that stuff, right? And then again, it comes back to you go into a fight manifesting negativity, and
yeah,
the outcome's probably not going to be good, right?
yeah,
You've done enough times. Well, I had done enough times where I got into a groove, and there's no better feeling than finishing a fight and skating in the box and seeing the crowd stand up and their
yeah,
bench stand up and the coach is clapping. Everybody enjoys it,
yeah,
right? You come out of the box after your 5 minutes, everybody on the bench stands up, bangs their
yeah,
sticks, the
yeah,
crowd's clapping, chanting your name. It's just,
yeah,
it's a very surreal feeling.
yeah,
It's almost like a high, right?
yeah,
You can score a goal in the game, and I think comparing scoring goals and fighting is
yeah,
like this,
yeah.
right? Like, goals happen so often, and in today's game, you still see if there's a fight on the ice,
Oh yeah,
everybody
boy, they
stands
fired
up.
up.
The entire building, everybody's into it, right?
Hmm.
And I just fed off that energy, and I love the fighting in the game. I honestly
Yeah,
did. Like I said, I've had a lot of injuries from it, but it
yeah,
did nothing but good for me, and
yeah,
it was enjoyment.
yeah. No, I can definitely empathize with that and understand. I think that's a great perspective and understanding for players, and and like you said, help carve out your career, made part of who
Yeah,
you were as a player. So now let's the last kind of big area, and then we can kind of open it up to some last minor things. But the other big area was your career, ending your career. I know there's a nice documentary kind of about it and all the concussions. I don't know if you want to just dive into that and like because concussions are a very tough injury, right? It's
yeah,
very different than like a shoulder, and like shoulder injury, for 6 months is tough for
yeah,
sure, but it's definitely different. Like the toll that it takes on, socially not being around the team or having lights, like there's all kinds of, it's like this, more, injury that's harder to deal with and
right.
assess. Right. So what's just dive into it. Cause obviously I don't know everything about the story, but also it'd be good for everyone else to hear about your transition and the concussions that you had, and then, cultivating with, stopping your career.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of concussions. I don't
Yeah.
know how many I've had. I've had them
Yeah.
different ways, from hits, from fights, from,
Yeah.
running into the net, hitting your head the wrong way.
Yeah.
I've had bad ones. I've had ones that lasted a couple days.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's not like a shoulder surgery. Being out for 6 months and recovering, being in a sling is one thing, but
Yeah.
not knowing when you're going to be better is another,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And what a lot of people don't understand is, you get so alienated from your teammates and from the atmosphere of being in the room when you have an injury, period, never mind a concussion, right?
Yeah.
Say there's a practice at 10 a.m., the guys show up at 9. Well, your schedule is show up at 7, be out of here before the team gets here.
Yeah.
So you don't interfere with what they're doing. Go home. We have a game at 7 tonight. Show up at 7, leave when the game's done. Right. So your freedom is gone, right? You
Yeah.
just feel like all of a sudden you're not a part of the team. You've been pushed aside. Somebody's come in, taking your spot in the lineup. They're playing great. Now you're like, well, when I do come back, this guy's playing so well, I'm not going to get in the lineup. And there's so many things that come with it. But yeah, I had a bad concussion. I don't know when this was, maybe when I was 20. So probably about 6 years ago. We were playing in Lehigh, and a guy had asked me to fight in warm-ups, Derek Mathers, and I was familiar with him. Super tough guy, really good guy. And he had just got called up and needed to fight and asked me to fight. And I said, no problem. And he caught me vulnerable. I wasn't protecting myself. He caught me with a punch. And then that was a Saturday night. Sunday, I ended up playing again. Again, a stupid decision on my part. I was competitive. I wanted to be in the lineup. I knew if I took myself out, I was trying to convince myself that, if anybody gets a punch in the face, you're going to be a little sore, right? You're going to have a headache. You're not going to feel right. And I was trying to convince myself it wasn't a concussion. And then honestly, from that day forward, I've had a headache every day now for 6 years. I went through a pretty dark time in Newfoundland, being, across the country from family and anybody I knew. And again, being alienated from a team, right? In a completely foreign province I've never been before. So yeah, you go into these like states and all you do is think, they tell you to be in a dark room. Well, when I'm sitting in a dark room, all I'm thinking about is negative stuff, right? Like, when's this headache going to go away? When am I going to stop being dizzy? When am I going to stop feeling like every time I leave, I'm going to have a panic attack? And it's just so hard to diagnose. So I think the biggest frustration with concussions is like the unknown, right? The amount of doctors I've seen who said, well, I don't think this is a concussion. I think maybe, something. Well, then what is it? Because it happened from a punch in the face. So it's got to be something relatable. Well, your headache should be gone by now. I understand that. I wish they were gone, but they're not. Right. So it's so hard to relay your message to these specialists that you see and all these tests you go through. And again, it's tough to explain to people, right? Like it got to a point where every day I walked into the rink, I was sick of my teammates saying, Crispy, how you feeling today? I'm not feeling good, guys. If I felt good, I'd be in here with you. I'd be on the ice, right? And they're just, they're being good guys. You want to like have spark conversation, nothing bad, but you just get to a point where enough's enough. Like, when is this going to be better? So yeah, it was tough. And I've had, like I said, I've had a number of concussions, and they were all different. Some of them I had no headache, some of them I had no fogginess, and other ones it was just complete opposite symptoms where I didn't have an answer for.
Yeah. No, for sure. So yeah, no, that's definitely tough. And the consistent headaches is, my dad's actually a medical doctor. And so, he was big on like, it's so most people don't know how to like understand it and treat it. Right. Like, I think somebody made a comment the other day in the news where it's just like, you can't negotiate with a player and like, this is how we treat concussions while they're concussed and like mid game, like that protocol's got to be very clearly laid out. They got to be educated before, because like, and especially like when I play, when you're playing, like we didn't really, it's fairly still new about how to best treat it and understand it. And there's still lots they don't know. Right. So, like you're saying, like they don't know why you still have headaches, right? All that kind of, so there's tons to still learn, but it definitely, hits the point of like, take yourself out of the lineup if you feel that there's even a chance. Cause I've told the players, I consult players when they're in the midst of like a big game and like they're midst they're going into it, and it's like, well, I think I don't have a concussion. Like, you got to know, like you like don't risk it. It's not like this thing can then, last longer and longer if you take that, chance. And is it really worth it? Like, it's just a game. Like, yeah, you might love the game, but like you'll come back from the concussion, then you can get back to it if you want. So
for sure.
So anyways, those are important lessons. What about, we don't have to dive too much more into it, but maybe just about then, the career transition out. Cause I don't always talk to players, and that on the podcast and stuff, but I think, yours is a unique one where the concussions was a major reason why, you stopped that pursuit and stopped playing professional hockey. Do you want to maybe just talk a bit about that decision and the transition out? Because it's never easy, right? It's never easy. You're a big part of your identity. There's a lot of things that go to it. Do you want to maybe just talk about that experience?
Yeah, it was by far the hardest decision ever. I was going through some times in some games where I had this one game and I skated out of a corner and I had a puck and I passed the puck and I watched my pass and somebody flew right in front of me. and I had no idea he was coming. And I had almost like tunnel vision. I went back to the bench and I sat there, and that was kind of like a waking point where I'm like, something's not right. I can't keep doing this, right? And again, the guys would go out on a Saturday night and I'd stay in my room because I just didn't feel right. And it was a really tough year, my last season, emotionally, mentally, even physically on like weight training. I just didn't have the energy to go into the gym and keep up. And I started shying away from fighting and what my game was and the physicality. And that's what got me to where I was. So it was probably, I had a high ankle sprain. I was injured. The team went on the road. I went home for a weekend. I told my parents. It was incredibly emotional. Didn't know how to tell them. I just said, listen, I can't do it anymore. I think this is going to be my last season playing. And that was like gut wrenching to say, right? Like we talked about earlier, the amount of stuff that they gave up for me. And I just felt like I was almost letting them down a little bit. Because I was close, I felt like I was really close to making it to the next level and having a career, but from shying away from the things that got me there, it was just like, I can't keep doing this. So I went back home. In the back of my mind, I knew I was probably done. And then you start getting offers from teams in Europe and the American League, and you're just like, okay, maybe I still got a little bit more to give. And it just got to a point where I was happy with what I had. I was happy with the progress that I had made for the months that I was home in my symptoms and my headaches. And I just didn't want to go back to feeling crappy. I just didn't want to go back to feeling depressed and nervous stepping onto the ice and worried about getting hit. Ultimately I made the decision myself. I talked to a lot of people. I talked to my parents, my old trainer, my fiance, and I just said, I think this is best. And the transition out of hockey was super difficult too, because I don't have no background. Like the only thing I ever knew was hockey, right? I was drafted. I didn't have any kind of college, university experience. I graduated high school and that was it. I just, like I mentioned earlier, I planned on playing in the NHL until I was 40, right? I didn't have any backup plan. I was 24. I didn't know what to do. So again, that your ego comes into it too, right? Like I was small town, got drafted, Connor Chris plays pro hockey. It was nice to come home and be recognized. And then all of a sudden I went from being a pro hockey player to just an average guy that I've never really felt before. It took a hit to my ego for sure. And I had to, swallow my pride and say, listen, you've done a lot in your life and you've done a lot more than a lot of people can say. And you were successful and I had fun doing it. It was a tough year for sure. From that, that training camp when I was in Detroit, that entire season was up and downs, and I just wasn't mentally there. And I knew that I couldn't continue playing if I didn't have the drive that I always did. Right.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really relatable experience and very honest. So I definitely appreciate you sharing it, because I think, everybody's going to retire at some point and stop playing, whether it's you're for various reasons. You can't play forever, or at least play professionally and competitively at that level forever. So, and it's never necessarily easy. Right. So, and so I definitely appreciate you sharing that. And I don't know, maybe you want to just maybe speak to more, like, I know you're doing a lot of coaching and those kind of things now, but what's life been like now, since obviously you're embracing the role and having an impact and other kids and giving back to the community. What's it like now that you're done playing and you've got over that, making that decision and made that choice and following through, and you can then obviously, you can plug your hockey school as much as you want, but and that kind of stuff. But yeah, what's life like now?
It's good, man. Honestly, I tell people all the time, and guys who are going through certain injuries, there's so much life outside of hockey. Like I live a great life now. What I'm doing now is so gratifying, to work with younger kids and kind of just like teach them things that got me where I was, right? And you're living through them. You watch them grow for an entire season, and it's gratifying to say, like, this kid's improved so much. You feel like you've contributed, right? Like you're giving back in a way. And I didn't know what I was going to do when I stopped playing, right? I wanted to stay in hockey. It's like I said, it's all I knew. And somebody kind of gave me that idea, and I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And it kind of it started on its own, right? Like word got out and I was enjoying it and I'm passionate about it. And I find myself getting frustrated still because I see players and kids doing things I did when I look back, and I'm like, I wish I tried a little harder in these drills because I'd be better at it when I made it to the next level.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes I give these guys a hard time, and I feel like that teacher in the room when you're a kid,
Yeah.
and the teacher says, "I'm not going to speak until everyone's quiet." Well, now I
Yeah.
find myself saying that, right? Like, just
Yeah.
listen for 2 seconds,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
But no, it's awesome. Honestly,
Yeah.
it was a tough decision when I made it, but I'm happy I did, and it's I
Yeah.
rolled right into things, and it's a lot of fun. Like I said, it's gratifying. It's nice to be at the rink still. You communicate with people, you meet new people. I got a lot of new friends,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, the kids still look up to you, right? Like
Yeah.
you're a mentor for them, and just like I looked up to guys when I was younger. Now it's nice to know that there's kids out there that want to
Yeah.
have my feedback and take what I say to heart, and they want
Yeah.
to get better, and it's nice. It's a lot of fun.
No, it's definitely meaningful. And like, 'cause I've run hockey schools and now you coach. I was a minor hockey coach for a while.
Okay.
When you're with somebody for a long period of time, you see that growth. It's so
Yeah.
meaningful. Like it's,
It's real. Yeah,
and
it's really
the
cool.
joy that they get and the progress that they can make. Versus like, even versus just like a week you can see it, but like when they do it for over a year and you got people coming back
Yeah.
and back, it's definitely meaningful work and a
Yeah.
way to contribute and take all these life lessons and hockey lessons and hockey skills that you develop and there's tons of people that love it, and so I'm sure you're doing a fantastic job, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
Two things to wrap up. One, is there anything we haven't talked about, or anything you want to make sure, any other lessons that you would want to encourage, anyone listening, players trying to get to the next level, playing at their best? What any other big lessons or something? Final thoughts on that end?
Not really. Like, honestly, just live in the moment. Like, I miss it every day.
Mm,
Every day, from the little things, from sitting in the lounge with the guys, just having a cup of coffee, watching Sports Center, to
yeah.
the bus trips, the 12-hour bus trips that I used to dread. Like, I miss being on that bus and
Yeah.
playing cards, and I
Yeah.
miss messing around with guys in practice. Just the
Yeah.
little things. So yeah, anybody that's still playing and is just going through the ups and downs of a career, we all go through it, right? Whether you're
Yeah.
playing hockey or whether you're working at the local McDonald's, you're going to be stressed and you're going to go through ups and downs, and just to find some time to enjoy it, because when you're done, it's a good life outside of hockey, but you're pretty lucky to be playing at a high level or just playing hockey in general, right? Like the amount of places I've seen and the hotels I stayed in, and all for free. Like, now if I want to go on vacation, I got to pay out of my pocket,
Yeah.
right? So
I
I
know,
just
right?
wish that when I was at these places, I was taking advantage of it and I was exploring, and um, yeah, it's just live in the moment, and be grateful for what you've been given, and like I said earlier, it's your whole family contributing an entire lifetime to making you successful. So there's always people that are looking up to you, and just carry yourself well. Be happy that you've got to where you are, and make the most of every opportunity.
Oh, I love that. Well, thanks so much. You want to plug social media or hockey school, anything? Just, where can people find you?
Yeah, Instagram.
Yeah.
What is it? I think it's Crisp Hockey Training.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like I mentioned,
Yeah.
it's a fun program. I just started off ice. I built a gym at my place, so I
Yeah.
started doing some off ice training in the summer times. And
Yeah.
again, it's the same thing. Watching guys grow all summer,
Mhm.
off ice and having fun. And for me, it's like, I know I said it earlier, but living through these guys, right? Like building a
Yeah.
family of guys, 5 or 6 guys who train together all summer, and seeing
Yeah.
them one by one come into the gym not knowing each other, and then leaving best friends,
Yeah.
right? Like I always say to guys now, that the guys I trained with when I was younger are guys that I still call all the time, and they're lifelong friends, right?
Yeah.
So it's a fun job. There's a lot to life outside of hockey, and I wish I realized that at a young age, and I appreciate it a little bit more. But
Yeah.
I'm happy where I am now, and things are really well.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. I took a lot out of it. Lots of good little takeaways, very inspiring. And I really appreciate you coming on, very open and honest as well. So thank you,
Yeah, for
Connor.
sure. Yeah, I appreciate the invite. It was fun.
Thank you.